A day after a 7th earthquake hit Bohol and Cebu, the president personally conducted his survey of the aftermath. He has mobilized all resources of government to deal with the impact of the quake. And joining us tonight is Director Renato Solidum of PHIVOLCS, and who joined the president for the inspection. And Solidum was there to assess the epicenter of the quake. Tonight he joins us on NewsLife. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, can you inform and educate our people the aftermath of the quake in Bohol and Cebu?
Essentially what happened yesterday morning was a fault moved and shook the island of Bohol with a magnitude of 7.2. And that magnitude has an energy equivalent of around 32 Hiroshima atomic bombs. That energy would have been scattered all over from Cebu up to southeastern Luzon and down south to Mindanao. Because of the strong shaking that was felt at Bohol and also in Cebu, damages occurred in the area consisting of collapses of churches and some buildings, also landslides in some areas, especially for Bohol in the Chocolate Hills area and in the other towns. And third would be the subsidence of soft grounds, like in reclaimed area and also along coastal roads.
Sir, were you able to go to the epicenter in Carmen, and what did your survey reveal?
Essentially, we flew over the area by a helicopter, and in Carmen, the evident scene would be the landslides in the Chocolate Hills. Now, there have been reports from the local governments and on the ground, and based on also on improved aftershock monitoring, we think that the epicenter is maybe north of Carmen and maybe near Sagbayan in Bohol. So just north of it. Essentially what happened was the shaking was strong enough to shake many of the hills to cause the landslides, and also to make the ground softer in the coastal areas for the roads to be affected as well.
Sir, you mentioned that the Chocolate Hills were affected. Now, will the quake cause landslides in the future, and can anything be actually done to deal with the erosion in some areas?
The earthquake itself caused the landslides in Chocolate Hills. The aftershocks that have followed the main shock of 7.2 might still loosen some of the unstable rocks. The landslide would not be prevented from these steep hills because most of the landslides were of the nature of rock fall, because the limestones are fractured rocks.
Sir, a lot of roads and bridges were also damaged. Was this due to liquefaction, and does this mean that there is a need to build a new circumferential road to a new site?
Well, the main cause of the subsidence of roads and some collapses of bridges would be the effect of liquefaction. What needs to be done is just to remove the broken parts of the road and repave it and reconstruct the road.
So will you conduct a geological or hazard mapping survey so that the local government in Bohol and Cebu can plan where communities can be built?
Well, essentially, the hazards assessment, of course, are continuing all over, but for Bohol and also Cebu, the hazards that are common are landslides, but for earthquakes, the liquefaction hazard in Bohol, even the landslide-prone areas and where the active fault is located, has been mapped already prior to this event.
So what about Cebu? The impact of the quake was just as bad. Why was this so?
Well, the impact in Cebu is not so bad compared to Bohol. In fact, in Cebu, it's just mainly structural for some of the buildings. In fact, at an intensity of 7, many of the buildings behaved excellently. And so one of the learnings that one can derive after that earthquake would be many of the old buildings, like churches, suffer damages simply because these are made up of limestone rocks, and with time, limestones crumble because the water would seep in and it would lessen its strength. And so many of those that were observed in Bohol are similar. Many of the limestone churches suffered. In other parts of Cebu, many of the buildings were okay, but some buildings, some parts falling off.
Sir, and after a big earthquake like this, can another one hit the country in the near future, or will there be a series similar to what happened in Aceh, Indonesia in 2004?
Well, strong earthquakes can happen in other parts of the country, but not as a direct result of the earthquake in Bohol. The Bohol earthquake may not trigger other earthquakes in other parts of the country. Now, with regards to the reference to the Indonesian or Aceh earthquake, that is a very large earthquake, and very large earthquakes like those need to rupture very long stretches of the ocean floor. It is most likely not possible to have that. The probability of having that is very small in the country.
So with the technology advancements that have been happening here in the world, are there any kinds of equipment that actually allow us to predict earthquakes, or are there any other things that are being used in PHIVOLCS to do that?
Well, there is no single set of technologies that can be used consistently to predict when a strong earthquake would happen. Although many organizations all over the world, including PHIVOLCS, would be trying to monitor and hopefully in the near future predict an earthquake. Some of the instruments, of course, that we use would be the traditional seismograph, that if there are small events happening on a known fault, there might be a pattern that would lead us to say that there can be a stronger one. We're also monitoring the faults using global positioning system receivers, where these receivers would measure millimeter distance of movement, and if ideally the fault would be moving, it might not rupture right away to produce a strong earthquake, so we might be able to predict it. But of course, these are on research stage only, and some faults don't show any signs, or most faults don't show any sign of when it would exactly move. In the medium to long-term prediction, however, we study the different faults by digging trenches across it and finding how often the fault would move. So we see that, for example, a fault can move every 400 to 600 years, and if we are able to determine the last major earthquake, then we can say whether the fault is soon to move or within the period for it to possibly move.
So in a final word, any advice to our people in Bohol and Cebu in the coming days, and also for people in other areas where there are faults in the areas?
Well, for those in Bohol and nearby provinces, the main event or main shock of 7.2, we think is most likely the maximum or the big part of its energy has been released. So most likely what will happen will be small events or the aftershocks. These events by themselves would not cause new damages in safe and strong buildings. What we are trying to remind people would be to avoid damaged buildings, because some of these aftershocks might cause additional damages or sometimes may cause the building to finally collapse. But we also expect aftershocks will diminish with time. So therefore, people should not worry about this, because these are normal occurrences and should not panic about it. We also need to remind people not to believe that there will be a tsunami. There was no possibility of a tsunami being caused by the earthquake because this was inland. We also would like to remind people that there is no technology yet to predict a strong one, so they should not believe if there are text messages telling them that there might be another strong earthquake in this exact time, in this exact day.
Okay.
For the rest of the Philippines, I think we should use the earthquake in Bohol as a reminder for all of us that from time to time the country, parts of the country can be affected by a strong earthquake, so it is more prudent for us to really prepare for it by first making sure that our houses and buildings are up to the current standard of the building code, and also making sure that we know how to respond properly during the earthquake and after it.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much for joining us here tonight on NewsLive. That was Director Renato Solidum of PHIVOLCS. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, sir.